Welcome to this Conversations on Groong episode. Before we get going, we want to remind you that we would really appreciate your comments and thoughts on our YouTube videos. So please go to our YouTube channel and let us know. Today, we're talking about the upcoming 2024 parliamentary elections in Georgia. We have with us Dr. Archil Sikharulidze. Welcome to the show, Archil. Great to have you back.
Thanks for having me again. Yes, nice to come back here.
Okay, so Georgia is holding parliamentary elections in October 2024, and the internal political rhetoric is definitely heating up. We know that there is a big rift between the current Georgian Dream ruling party and the West, to the point where Georgia's EU candidacy has been paused and a number of sanctions have been imposed against the ruling party's leadership. These have a lot to do with the recent law on transparency of foreign influence, which is more commonly known as the so-called foreign agent law. And this is one out of many anti-liberal legislative changes introduced in the country by the ruling party. Amidst high polling numbers, Georgian Dream appears to have doubled down on its position of independence from the collective West. Georgian Dream has even raised the specter of outlawing the opposition United National Movement, the UNM party.
Let's start with this, actually. So there was a fiery statement published on the Georgian Dream Facebook page, which stated that if GD achieves constitutional majority, they will initiate a legal process, as a result of which UNM and all of its satellites and future descendant parties will be declared unconstitutional. So can we double click on this? Why does GD perceive that UNM should be declared unconstitutional?
Well, once again, thanks for having me, and good evening to your audience. I think that we just once again should keep in mind the general tendencies in Georgian politics. Since 2018, it became very popular to be extremely critical. So since 2018, it became popular to blame each other being traitors, in quotes. And nowadays, I would like emphasize, thanks to our Western colleagues who are trying hard, this extreme gone to even more extreme. And we can see that before the pre-election campaign actually officially started, opposition members were extremely aggressive. The rhetoric was very clear. Once we come to power, we expel Russians, we bring country to the old rails, we will jail Georgian Dream members, and we will expel from the country or jail Bidzina Ivanishvili, quote, Russian oligarch. As soon as the pre-election campaign officially started, GD came out and, as it always used to do, follows the rules that are set mainly by opposition. So all this rhetoric of pro-Russian powers, spies, agents was offered by opposition. And unfortunately, Georgian Dream, unwilling to create its own narrative, decided to follow it. So they needed to hit up, to rise the stakes. So they called UNM traitors and said that they are going to ban the movement in general as a Gestapo, as a ISIS, or any other political or terrorist movement. So do I believe this is possible? No. What I think, I rarely believe, but here I can say that I believe that this is impossible. What I think is going to happen, once elections are done, and if nothing happens, Georgian Dream is going to win these elections. I think they're gonna get at least 45% of the support that they usually get, and protests will erupt. And we all know that NGOs and the Western colleagues, some of the Western colleagues are hoping that this process will lead to government to leave by the end of the day. This is not going to happen. And very soon, GD will come out and say that, you know what, we're promised, but we need a few more years. And slowly then try to downgrade this temperature. And by the end of the day, say that we defeated you and me. Next election, they are not going to be there anymore, so we don't need to ban them. This is what's going to happen. This is what I really think will be. And one of the arguments why I do consider this to be true assumption, I will just remind you that, for example, let's say the names. Let's bring the cases. One of the main parties is you and me. Who are the main people when we speak about United Nations movement? Mikhail Saakashvili. He is jailed. I mean, as a historic figure, he is important, but he is not relevant anymore for years. Nika Guaramia, the former deputy general prosecutor, Nicanor Melia, the former head of the party, they united before the elections during the protests against the law. They, I quote, said, Nika Guaramia said, those who do consider this law to be righteous and do not think that the European future, the only true future, are not protected by the law. This is quote by this person. Also, he said that they are going to expel all the Russians, block, introduce visas. As soon as production campaign started, he said, we need to communicate with Russians, we need Russian visitors, we need Russian tourists. So narrative immediately changed. And he argumented saying that this is a demand of the deep state of the waters. So once again, this is all Georgian, part of Georgian mentality, an attempt to heat up, to warm up people. But factually, we all now understand that there are some limits. And I will remind you, the latest statement by Gaharia, the former prime minister, who was also the part of the radical movement, who just recently came out and said, we need to cooperate with the Russian Federation. That's boom, that's over. So every time when people speak, these announcements are just a small talk.
But Archil,
yes.
Just from a pure electioneering perspective, doesn't it make more sense to be accommodating to the other side in order to get more of the voters from the other side? Or is it that the voters demand such divisive and polarizing rhetoric?
I think this is a really nice question, Hovik. I think that the whole Georgian political narratives, and I always mentioned 2018, because this was when Salome Zurabishvili was fighting for the presidential post. This is the moment when the whole narrative turned to the traitors. So everyone are traitors. Traitors against traitors, patriots, non-patriots, spies, and so on. And since 2018, this was only strengthening this position. Label, destroy, insult, promise to ban. And this is even strengthened now thanks to the position of some of American and European colleagues who came out and directly are involved in the elections. Some American European colleagues just come out, say, Georgian Dream must be replaced because we don't like Georgian Dream. And they say, this is the will of Georgian people. So US ambassador, like former one, Kelly Dagnan, unfortunately, the recent one is much more smart and more diplomatic. But even here, you can hear that American ambassadors clearly come out and say, this is our will, and this is the will of Georgian people, even though Georgian people never voted for US ambassador to speak on behalf of Georgian people. And it's obvious nowadays.
We've seen a similar US policy here, which is intolerant of any Russian influence or intolerant of even the possibility of Armenia cooperating, for instance, with Russia. And I presume that that is the same policy that EU, the West, is pursuing in Georgia. So does this mean that with GD basically leading the elections, and it appears to be able to digest all these statements about banning UNM and so forth, does this mean that the only recourse that the West would see after the throughout this whole process is basically a regime change? First of all, is GD basically burning his bridges and going all in with the West, not with the Georgian people, but in relations with the West? And is the West basically doing the same thing? So how can they reconcile in the future?
Well, I think I will repeat the words said by my Russian colleague Nicholas Sulai from GIMO, who said that GD is not turning its back to the West. It's following the same path it's been following from 2012. And Georg Harris said the same. GD was always about the balancing influence of Russia and keeping the West in Georgia. This was also supported by the West. It is, and as my colleague said, it is the West, now the elites of the West, who are turning back on GD and who are demanding from GD to change its pattern dramatically and repeat the same thing that opposition is saying. But, and here's a very important thing that you said, whether there is a regime change or not, there's something that even the opposition cannot do. And all the statements that Georgia will be involved, Georgia will become another Ukraine, another radical state, or another country that is ready to clash with Russia is definitely over extreme exaggeration. And we can see this. So GD is not burning the bridges because GD says the main goal of GD is to win this election, to show the West that all your reports from NGOs, all your statements, your best, this is a fake. We have a really support from deep state, a real water, not the political boumond in the city center, not those children who are walking the European flags, but for those people who make money in Georgia, who are the middle class, and who fight for Georgian economy. And I think that this is the main goal. And once West sees this, because unfortunately lots of reports are extremely non-objective. You can read that there is less objectivity, more ideology. Once the West sees this, I think the Western policy will definitely be adjusted.
Archil, earlier we mentioned that the Georgian Dream is leading the polls currently. So the latest polls show that their support is at 59.3%, while the leading opposition party, the United National Movement, would get 13.1%. Even if all the opposition parties voted in unity, they would theoretically get around 40%. Is the Gorby poll reliable? How much can we trust these numbers? And how much would an observer understand the current situation on the ground during these elections? And before you answer, let me also mention that we will put all of these links in our show notes. So for people who actually want to check the poll results, please go to our show notes and click on the links.
Okay, let me say the main statement. There are no social polls that you can rely in Georgia. I can definitely say this. No one relies neither on NDI, IRI, Gorby in general, because all of them, they make mistakes at least like 4, 5, 6%. This is a lot. 4 or 5% is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned 59%. We know other surveys that give Georgian Dream 30, 33%. And what we can definitely track down is that the support among the opposition is everywhere the same. So it's mainly GD's support that is changing. So Gorby is like 59%, NDI, IRA is like 33%, and okay, like oppositional surveys maybe like 28, 30%. But opposition has the same level. It's you and me, 30%. It's then like European Georgia, Lelo, like Gyurchi, and it's like 3% or 5%, and then below 1%. So what is the logic here? Why these sources are published? I do believe we all in Georgia, everyone understands that the strong support of Georgian Dream is 33%, obviously. UNM, if it accumulates all possible support, is like a maximum 15%. And the rest of parties like 5, 3, and below 1. What are the narratives? Opposition says, look, Georgian Dream has a 30% of support. What it means that 70% is for opposition. And they really make this argument. But we all know that it's not the case. It means that 30% support Georgian Dream. The lots of opposition gets maybe 20 to 25, maybe even 30%, but the rest, 40% of voters simply do not consider these powers to be sufficient to be representative. So the rest, 40% of population, do not consider to be engaged. And they are engaged only in case where there are some radical scenarios. And in these radical scenarios, when the rest of voters are put on the crossroad, either Georgian Dream with Bidzina Ivanishvili or you and me with Saakashvili, they always vote for Georgian Dream and Bidzina Ivanishvili, because these the rest people are, we can call them the middle people. So those who are working, who are making money, who would like to have stability, who remember the previous government, and who analyze and support not because they like or dislike, but they have like two parties they don't like none of them, but they like Georgian Dream more than they like you and me. So it's like opting between two less popular parties. And I always say the GD hadn't done so many unpopular stuff that you and me did at some point, and that is the main goal. So, and one more, you said about ideology, and I'm making these statements for the last probably 7 years. Georgian political parties have no ideology. The only party that actually has ideology is Gürcü. That is like neoliberal, ultra liberal movement that is for legalization of cannabis, of guns. So they take like ultra liberal approach from America that you can. This is an American style ultra liberal party that says it's freedom for smokers, freedom for language. We don't need to protect anything. So I think you understand what I mean here.
Yeah.
The rest
And they have
parties,
2% in this Gorby poll. So basically,
yes,
they're the
they have
lowest one.
2%, but they have very steady 2%. And if you look at this party, this is part that is not afraid to pursue its ideology. So they never change their mind because of ideology. And that is what is very respectful. I mean, if you ask lots of people, they say, I would have voted for them because they have some principles. But they are not going to win, so I'll vote for some general party. It's like in USA, in Georgia. If you ask what parties are in USA, you say like Democrats and Republican, but they actually are other parties, but we know that they're not going to win. So we have always like this gamble between two parties. The same is here.
We mentioned a little bit earlier that the Georgian Dream wanted to get a constitutional majority, essentially like the supermajority that the civil contract has in the Armenian parliament. At what level of political support do they need to be to achieve such a majority?
Well, this is a fair tale. I can immediately tell you. They had a constitutional majority in 2012 in October, then when they won elections, and since that they lost it. In Georgia, constitutional majority in modern democratic environment, it's impossible. So they need to get more than 50 votes, not even 50 votes. It's like 55 plus, if I'm not mistaken. I cannot tell you the exact percent, but it's much, much more than they can afford, than they can get. And I think they clearly realize this, that this is just a narrative. So what they need strong support in a way that each and every side, including the Western collective, will say that, yes, this is the fair play, and they could have managed to get so many votes. I think that's why they will try to get 44, 46, maybe 48%. Maybe if opposition continues to degrade, because what we see now opposition is that even now they don't know where they create some groups, then they dismantle, they fight each other. If this continues, maybe Georgian will be able to get 51%, but that is the roof. I mean, I don't think that this more is possible because too many people's well, first of all, and you said already about banning you and me, too many people think that GD simply didn't follow promises, like persecuting those people who were engaged during you and me in general. And too many people think among GD followers that they break their statements on a regular basis, like the same transparency law. They put this law. They say that this was very important. This was like dramatic necessity, and then next day they took it back, and then they introduced it again. So in Georgia, even though Georgia is one of I would argue that one of the most westernized countries among South Caucasian, not only South Caucasian countries in the post-Soviet space, but there's some basic understanding in Caucasia, you must have a government that holds its basic principles. Not everything is allowed, and GD broke these principles on a regular basis. No one trusts GD probably anymore.
It's interesting that you mentioned that few people have really ideological motives for voting, but still, is there some concern in terms of external direction of the country? Is there concern about traditional values versus liberal values? For instance, I've heard that Georgia is a really traditional society and Orthodox society. And in general, what has been the trajectory? is the support for GD changing regardless of the poll, and regardless whether it's high or low? Is support for GD increasing, decreasing, or is it remaining the same?
I think if you check it's for the last 5-6 years, it is the same. It's like 44% on elections. You and me, it's like 13-15%. It is the same because voters are the same mainly. They get older. The new generation, the younger generation is not old enough to vote, or those who are youngster, they do not engage to voting process. They can come out on a protest, drink, dance, and we had this how it called like dance revolution in Georgia. The BBC called it also really funny. They can like run with EU flags, but it's one issue to run with flags in order to go to election, then to protest and to fight for your rights and freedoms. That is why the situation is the same. But you said traditional conservatives. Well, first of all, what is traditional in Georgia is not perceived traditional in USA. Georgian liberals may be considered as American conservatives, and American conservatives can be perceived in Georgia as liberals. We should keep in mind this because we are replicating mainly American trends with a huge time interval, like 10, 15, 20 years. So when American liberals turn to conservatives, they're still liberals in Georgia. You should keep this in mind. So if it was popular to speak about the freedom of wearing guns, and now it's like highly criticized in America, in Georgia, it's now only becoming popular. So you should always for you to understand one more thing that I would just want to say. I mean, nowadays they're trying to represent as a traditional, and you know how it's like traditional family, abusive family. They would like to make some, that if it was equality sign there, and versus pro-Western, modernized family, where there's strong woman, strong movements, all this stuff. But this is not actually what is in demand among the general population. That's why I always say, and I said on your podcast, there is what I call political Beaumont in the city center. There is then the rest of Tbilisi, and there is the rest of Georgia. So when we speak about the rest of Georgia, the deep state, actually, they don't really, I mean, for them, Georgia is not about traditional versus the modern. It's about the traditional. And if you look at the stats, 86% support charge. It's second after the military. And we obviously understand why military is superior, because this is some historical background there. The most popular trusted figure is Ilya II, our patriarch. So we obviously see that the deep nation is because that is still struggling with socio-economic issues, or the threats that are coming from Russia, from other countries. They still have this strong sense that traditions, family, this is what keeps Georgia relevant, as it kept Georgia for thousands of years. That is why it is irrelevant to speak about the wider Georgian people fighting traditions against being modern.
In Armenia as well, the Catholicos, or the office of the Catholicos, is seen as one of the most trusted institutions. But the way that it is explained by pollsters here is that the trust in everything else is so low. I just want to get your sense in terms of, is it because of the bankruptcy of the political parties as institutions, or is it because simply Georgians are very religious?
So let's apply here a scholarly approach. Existence of A doesn't mean that it influences B. Or so does it? Obviously there is a correlation between those societies where there is very strong social economic positions and the low trust to charge, because people don't feel necessity to apply for the charge. And of course, we can say that the reason why Georgian church and the religion so strong historically is because for centuries this was actually the church that was keeping Georgia alive. Because sometimes Georgia was occupied and there was no government, no elites, only church. But on the other hand, it also shows, if you ask me, that lots of people are actually religious. And when they have decision-making process They don't only think, okay, I made money, I don't need church anymore. Not say, I made money, now I will make charity to the church. So it's not like, or it's not only a one-side approach. It's not, we cannot state if tomorrow Georgians become rich, the church will simply disappear. I don't think that we can make such correlation. But of course, we can say that the reason behind strong position of church is partially because political institutions and because politicians are extremely not respected, and they show themselves to be inconsistent. But in the same time, just take Georgian army. It is the first most trusted institution. Georgian army lost all wars. We had so many wars and we lost all of them. Let's make it just a few minutes. Let's make a comparative analysis. So there is an Armenian army that fought well during the first Karabakh campaign. That's why we can say the Armenian military is so prized. But Georgian army, unfortunately, lost so many people. It was a huge injury in Georgian mindset, but still it's the most trusted one. Why? Because it is a strong belief that these people sacrifice their lives for the Georgian nation. And so we can also say that the reason why church is popular, there is a correlation because previously priests and those who believed in Orthodox Christianity sacrificed their lives for Georgia. So that's why I just want to show you to unveil this very complicated topic and say that it's not just because of social economic situation.
Yeah. The upcoming parliamentary elections in October are seen as pivotal in determining the future direction of Georgia, whether the country will reject the conservative policies of Georgian Dream and punish the party in the polls, or whether the voters will approve of their policies and therefore put Georgia's EU relations on ice for the foreseeable future. Well, but parties and candidates are always saying that the current elections are the most important ones ever and that the stakes are higher than ever. Really, Archil, how important are these elections in Georgia and why?
I think importance to these elections were granted by Western colleagues. This narrative that run or die, you are either with us or you are with Russia was imposed by a small group of Western, or I'll call them supervisors. Every time when people tell me that the West Americans know about Georgia, I'm laughing because we all know that in South America, only a few people know about the Republic of Georgia. They know state of Georgia, but not Republic of Georgia, and the same in the EU. There are 10, 20 people who supervise Georgia and South Caucasia in general. These people get information from those NGOs that they finance, and they don't hide them, and this is like a circle there. And these people who were actually totally fine with GD, including, I will remind the statements by Prime Minister of Austria, UK, Angela Merkel, everyone, just like last time Biden, like Barack Obama, all these people, they are all fine. Now, narrative has changed because of the war in Ukraine. And these people decided that Georgia, as well as all those countries who think that they would like to get some benefit from the West, must have this, in quote, solidarity with the West. So we should cut off all ties with everyone that the West doesn't like and suffer with, not the West, because the West is not suffering, with the Ukraine. And this is the concept of solidarity. Mm-hmm. Deep state in Georgia is not ready to do this because Georgia was suffering much, much longer and earlier than Ukraine. All 90s, early 2000, 2008, there is no demand for that. No more suffering. Georgian deep state demands stability, non-radical movements, evolutionary development. That's why political elites say that this is the moment, but we all know, and I can reiterate, this is what pre-election campaigns show, that actually, even if a position wins, they will not drastically change Georgian policy. Georgia still needs millions of Russian tourists. Georgia needs income from Russia. Georgia needs gas from Russia. Georgia needs Iran, Georgia needs Azerbaijan, and Georgia cannot send anyone to fight in Ukraine. That is very simple and obvious. Can Georgian government, if consisted from oppositions, to be more radical in statements like Saakashvili? Yes. But like Saakashvili was by one hand making one statement, by another hand, like granting free entrance to Russians, they will do the same. They will just hide this and do it non-officially. This is why, and that's why I will say this is obvious when you see how narrative significantly shifted. So this is mainly narrative created on what I call Twitter Georgia, because this is a narrative on the Twitter, not even on Facebook. And one most, I have a question to you, simple one. Isn't Georgian integration to the Western institutions already like stopped before the law? I mean, no one will even hesitate to agree with this. Georgia's integration to NATO was abandoned in 2017 when I was in, if not mistaken, Aghveran in Armenia. And there is a closed meeting, and there was a representative of Jamestown Foundation who simply said that, let's put it somewhere else. That's all. So since 2017, no one spoke about map, schmap, no more talks. Now it will go, so it's already like 7 years as no one speaks about getting map. Now it's all about EU.
Sorry, can you expand what's MEP?
Membership Action Plan. So this was when Georgian, you and me in 2007 said that we are going to become NATO member. The next 10 years, it was every year about when we get NATO map, membership action plan. In 2017, we had a meeting of advanced experts and scholars when we Georgian scholars and experts were advised to start speaking about map, to focus on democracy and so on. And no one speaks about map anymore for the last 7 years. So now they focused on EU. And now it was the narrative that once we get candidate status, we'll get rich. That's all, the light in the end of the tunnel. We got it, and we are not rich. There is no end of the tunnel. Now they speak that once we open debate, we're going to finally get the prize that no one knows what is the prize. This is just a small talk. Georgia's integration to EU and especially NATO is impossible unless the Russian government will collapse, disappear, or whatever it happens. It is impossible. It's like fairy tale. We all know this. And Georgia's EU integration is impossible to do it to two reasons. The first one, Georgia has no land connectivity to EU members. Nothing. And even the connectivity to Ukraine via Black Sea is under the threat.
Well, I mean, if you're saying that Georgia has no land connectivity in Armenia, I'm wondering what pro-European supporters are thinking about in Armenia.
Armenia's European path just started 1 year ago. Georgia's European path, I'm listening for the last 20 years. So this old narrative, you are like in Ukraine, you are replicating narratives from Georgian colleagues, just one by one. And I always tell my colleagues, I feel as if I was like in 2005, 6, 7, almost the same narratives, the same banners, the same statements. I just want to finish my point to move on. So this is just from geopolitical and purely scholarly approach. EU is about the connectivity, land or at least sea. The Black Sea is very dangerous. There is no land. B, you need to have some economic characteristics. Georgia joining EU nowadays, let's imagine it's a collapse for Georgian economy. Georgia will be the poorest country in EU, incapable of maintaining itself. So this is this is not something that we all would like to. And see the last one, EU itself is in extremely high pressure and crisis. I don't think that EU itself is ready to engage to these debates actually. And let's remind to Armenian, Georgian, and actually I voted for Georgia's Western path in 2008, that there are ideologies, there are wishful thinkings, and there is reality. So reality, we must look at reality. Otherwise, this is my advice to Armenian colleagues, you'll go through the same path the Georgian gone, and we got not the best results. And you can see, no one could have imagined this controversy between traditional pro-Western. We all were pro-Western. Nowadays, the most pro-Western country in the post-Soviet Georgia is debating whether we should continue the same way or think carefully what were our mistakes. So you need to learn from our mistakes.
Yeah, it's absolutely true that if we look at Georgia, we basically can see a summary of the next 5 to 10 years of Armenia's future on its current path, if it continues on the current path. But I want to ask you to conclude this section on elections and everything. You know, the West is frequently accusing Georgia of serving Russian interests. I want to know, first of all, how true is that? And also, the other giant on the other side, is Turkey a player in Georgian politics?
Well, let me start from the end. Turkey has a voice when it comes to some like Fethullah Gulen schools, when it comes to the topics that are crucial for Turkey's domestic affairs. Like when there was like a alleged attempt of the coup in Turkey, you remember the director of the Fethullah Gulen school was arrested. And immediately European colleagues just were sent like a rocket to Tbilisi, and they'd made official statement that Georgia's strategic partners are Europeans and not Turkey solely, and he was liberated like in 1 week probably. Turkey was allegedly blamed for asking Georgian parliament not to celebrate Didgori battle, during which David Ekmeshinabeli like destroyed Ottoman Empire forces. So Turkish ambassador said that this is not the best thing to celebrate and have strategic partnership with Turkey. So Georgia should not celebrate victories over Ottoman Empire. This is not a friendly step, and there was a huge debate. So, but that's all. It's like Azerbaijan's influence in Georgia when it comes to Azerbaijani citizens who maybe Baku would like to have, in Georgian, like for internal affairs minister saying that leave, please leave. We don't need problems because we're dependent on Azerbaijani gas, but that's all. That is the limits of their power. With regard to Russian interests, well, first of all, in Georgia, or everyone are Russian agents. This is by default. And I also bring I told you last time, the prominent words by Lincoln Mitchell, who said that if Georgian Dream is agent of Russia, then its followers and those who support Georgian Dream are also Russian agents, and it's half of the country, if not more. And we all know that the Georgian citizens and woods are not Russian agents by default. This is the first one. The second one, what you mean doing the Russian job? And here there are so manipulations. So if you come out and say that I would like to have a traditional family, you are by default Russian agent, because traditionalism is now popular in Russia. You are a Russian agent. If you say that I need to have the law like in America, FARA, you are a Russian agent, because the West doesn't like it. So nowadays, Russian colleague, the Western colleagues, and those people who share the ideas of the Western colleagues call pro-Russian everything that they do not agree with. So we all know that in Georgia, traditional family is at the core of everything. Georgian Dream, if you ask me, decided to bring the new law about defending the traditional family and so on. I think it was fully unnecessary. There are much more important issues to take into consideration, like education system of Georgia, the check where the youth gets knowledge, but okay. How this law was considered, no one officially criticized it, because everyone knows that this law is supported by a vast majority of Georgians. For vast majority of Georgian families, women, men, religion, it's non-debatable. It's undebatable fully. And still, American citizens come out and say this is a Russian narrative. Why? Because that is what the Western colleagues, supervisors, as they call it, do. They call everything that they don't like Russian narrative because it can be sold on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, and so on and so forth. But this is also what makes Georgian people, I think those people are not politically motivated and ideologically motivated, and this is the vast majority of Georgians, very angry, because what they see, how Georgian deep state considers itself. So we were, let's say, oppressed by Russians. during Soviet Union. Okay, not everyone thinks that during Soviet Union Georgians were oppressed, but let's see. Okay, we're not in charge of our sovereignty. We got this sovereignty. We're emancipated from Russian Federation, and nowadays, the U.S. ambassador who speaks on behalf of the Georgian people. So and this by default puts a really bad parallels between times when we had like Russian namestnik, he used to speak on behalf of the Georgian people, and now we have U.S. ambassador who is a diplomat, and we are not controlled by the United States of America or by Brussels. We are not even members of EU, so EU has no official right to speak on behalf of Georgian people on diplomatic level, and still these people speak on behalf of Georgian people. And what they are frequently hear, people, just regular people saying, who gave these people right to speak on behalf of Georgian people? And this is very important statement, and this is something that unfortunately I do assume these statements do not get reflection from our Western colleagues. I think, and I wrote an article about this, and I call it the Russian mistakes that the Western colleagues are doing nowadays. And I brought some examples, like the very popular mistake that the Russians used to do in the early 2000s that drove Georgians mad was speaking on behalf of Georgian regular citizens. This was the first one. The second one, this narrative, you are either with us or Georgians will disappear. This was the beloved narrative of Russians. You know, you are with us or you will be disappear. Now we hear almost the same. All American, European colleagues speaking on behalf of Georgian people and arguing that if not with the West, Georgia will disappear. And you know, the chairman of Georgian parliament, Shalom Papuashvili, said, I think, perfect sum up of what is happening. He said, I'm not sure why everyone thinks that if they come to Georgia, eat 2-3 hinkali, drink Georgian wine, they are all experts of Georgia, and they can speak about on behalf of Georgian people. And this is a general tendency, you know, this undermining the processes in Georgia as something unimportant, something easily picked up, and the way they easily speak on behalf of Georgian people. This is what drives Georgian people really mad, and this is what actually Russia used to do. And nowadays they realize this was a huge mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very racist, if you ask me. And something similar happened in Armenia, where in Samantha Power, the author who wrote the book about genocide, who is at the head of the USAID, after the ethnic cleansing of Artsakh, all she did was come and make zhingyalov hats, which is like bread with greens in it. It's a traditional Artsakh recipe, and that was it. And she did a few photo ops, and they feel that this is enough to then enable them to push their political position. Just like throw people a little bit in their faces.
But she also made like pictures on Twitter near this fire, saying that she's with Armenian people. No, that is the narrative, Hovik and Asbed, that people that I mean, this is relevant for those Armenians and Georgians who, as my colleagues like Cornelia Kakachia, Gian, Nodia, who truly believe that there is only one way, the Western way. They are ideologically believing this, but for people like me and people like me, we are, if these people are reaction Soviet past, and that's why they're radically European, they preach European, they truly believe. People like me, we are the reaction of these already people, on this radical Europeanness. And for us, Americans, Russians, speaking on behalf of Georgian people, not knowing Georgian language, not trying hard, and this is not serious. I mean, we
insulting. It's not even not serious. It's
I don't want to use like these harsh words, but it's like, you know, if you ask Georgians, how can you learn EU? They tell you need to learn like at least few EU languages, travel all around the EU. But then you ask how to learn Russia, nothing, just go to Poland, speak about Russia, it's like Mother Russia, Soviet Union. About Armenia, go to Yerevan, maybe Vyodzor, Georgia, Tbilisi, Khinkali, you know, and that is the way Russia lost Georgia. Because even nowadays, if you go to Russia and ask, who do you have a really serious scholars experts on Armenian in Georgia who know the internal kitchen. Okay, I'm not asking you to know the language. It's because none of them know. But and there are only a few people, just a few people, and these people are not those who are making decisions, and those who are not people on whose reports decision makings are done. So these people, and we all know probably, who write some reports, some analysis, scholar stuff, and that's all. And then Russia makes a mistake. It spends 10 years analyzing what mistakes were instead of reading some smart papers. And the same is happening in Armenia. I'm sure that at some point this euphoria will go down. Americans will make a few mistakes. Armenians will make a few mistakes, and they will come to Georgian experience back and read articles that were written like 5-10 years ago. So I always tell my colleagues in Armenia, as I used to tell Ukrainian colleagues, just read a few objective, non-objective articles, see what was the Georgian experience, but they don't wait this time. They think that once again they put ideology above the history, the experience, and they think that only by ideology they can twist reality, but they cannot.
Yeah. Archil, very quickly, I know that you like to talk about this a lot, but one of the topics of the election debate, if we can call it as such, has been whether Mikhail Saakashvili, how much is he responsible for Georgia's ill fate? Let's just put it that way. He's the founder of the UNM and is currently in jail. And one of the main accusations by GD, Georgia Dream, against him is that he was responsible for the war in 2008.
Well,
and his supporters claim that he's a political prisoner, blah blah blah. So is he a political prisoner? How much responsibility does he have? And anything else you can say on this topic very quickly?
I can say two things. The first one, he lost European Court of Human Rights judgment. This is the highest court in EU. EU ruled out that he is there where he must be. So if we will base our own assumptions on legal procedures, on trust to European Court of Human Rights, and we say that Georgia is going to EU, this is the highest possible court. He lost, and court made the decision he is not a political prisoner. There is also political part, because thanks to Georgian NGOs, US Department sanctioned those judges who put Saakashvili to the jail. So we have a paradox situation. On the one hand, Mikhail Saakashvili is not official political prisoner because ECHR decided that he is not. But on the other hand, the State Department is pushing, because of its political interest, to announce Saakashvili a political prisoner, and they even sanctioned unilaterally those judges. So now it's up to you to decide, the court versus political standpoint. Now about the guilt. Saakashvili is like Lenin, Stalin, Bidina Ivanishvili. They try to put everything to one person, and this is a mistake because there was a huge government. There are very prominent figures there who were also directly involved. Just because Saakashvili is the face of you and me, they're trying to destroy him as a political project. In general, finally, to finalize this topic, he as we used to call him, American star boy, American project, to be fully, finally dismantled, destroyed. But if we speak about guilt, so let's be clear, it's not only Bidina Ivanishvili, it's not only Saakashvili. If we are speaking about the guilt, Georgia is not a dictatorship where one person controls everything. So for me, it's pretty obvious.
Okay. Earlier this spring, we read an allegation from the Georgian government, specifically Prime Minister Kobakhidze, which criticizes NGOs that attack the Georgian Orthodox Church. Obviously, this is interesting to us because in Armenia, currently, the main mantle of the opposition is being carried by a member of the Armenian Apostolic Church, Archbishop or Serbazan Bagrat Galstanian. Talk about a completely different take on the separation of church and state. So the top leadership of the church has stated that the movement is the archbishop's personal initiative, but at the same time, the Catholicos has blessed the archbishop and obviously is accommodative of the process. Can you tell us what the exact nature of these attacks that Kobakhidze was criticizing? Because we really haven't found a whole lot in English on the internet.
Well, let's make very brief historical overview. So once the revolution happened, those people who were in charge, they have their own views on Georgia's development. They wanted to create new Georgia and to breed new Georgians, in quotes. This new Georgian should have been free from Soviet past, had nothing to do with Russia, even the post-Soviet space. It'd be like some new Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, radically pro-American and see their future only in the West. This project failed in general because Saakashvili figured out that Georgians don't want to be new Georgians. They are pretty okay with some Soviet legacy. They are not ashamed full of Soviet legacy. They are not ashamed of so many stuff. So you cannot just breed new Georgians. So there must be some hybrid version or some updated Georgians. As a part of this change, it was obvious that in the modern Georgia, the church couldn't have had privileges as it used to. So for him, the best version was the American model or like Polish model, or where the church is not only separated, but it doesn't have serious political power. Let's be obvious about that.
But also, let me just counter that and I'll let you continue. At least in the Polish model, the Catholic Church did have significant effect on certain policies, such as communism. It was essentially led the fight against communism. So would it be correct to say that when the issue concerns survival of the state as we know it, and in Poland, it's very much a Catholic state, then the church should be involved. Is that what the responsibility of the Georgian Orthodox Church is as it perceives it itself in terms of guardian of Georgian values and Christianity?
Thank you, Hovik. So what I meant is the Polish American, I meant the current situation, not about the historic facts.
Okay.
So it's because Georgian church already was suppressed during Soviet Union. So, and Georgian church is already considered as important milestone in preserving Georgians. So, because Georgian church is much older than the rest of the churches, it has, I would say, sometimes not questionable historic periods, sometimes very noble periods. And the goal was not to speak about historic, but to say that, look, modern Poland, they have voice, yes, but that's all. They can say that the rest of the power is based on political institutions. That was the point. And if not put the charge outside the top 10 trusted institutions, keep the charge controlled. To have the clergies who will share the ideological postulates of Saakashvili. And they have some of the clergies. They have the same ideas. But they also failed because the government was weak, the political system is very weak. So in comparison with the church as an institution, the rest institutions need decades to get as close as churches. And since that, these people, you and me, moved mainly to business, media, and NGO sector. So they established new NGO sectors. In Georgia, there is no NGO that doesn't have any former politician there. And these politicians are not just some researchers. They create ideological platform. They bring money and they invest. So this is the called open door policy. So once people leave politics, they have a bad background, they disappear, they go to media, they go to business, then to NGO. From NGO, they speak about democracy, they go back to the politics. That's what is happening in Georgia. That's why Kobakhidze said that NGO consists from politically motivated people. And then, because all the same people went to NGO, they always are fighting the church. When we say fighting the church, we don't mean that they are going to burn down the church. They're fighting the church, its status, its position, to destroy it as a political power and actor. Even though the church is not involved officially, they never blessed any movement in Georgia, as opposed to in Armenia. But these people understand that there are topics like gender issues, like family traditions, that church can simply come out and say, this is the moment. And people will come out.
Line
and you
up,
just need
right?
to, and yes, and then you need just to check out. Look, May 17th, this year, there was the day appointed by Patriarch, the Family Day. Abroad, it's a day against transphobia, homophobia. If previously they tried hard to somehow do something, they just simply left. And this year, there are thousands of, hundred thousands of people celebrating the Family Day, more than all protests before together taken. This is the strength of church. You know,
to be honest, I'm quite envious of that, because I haven't seen, you know, people say that finally the church is stepping up right now, but I haven't seen in the past, even today, the church strongly, you know, putting its weight down in terms of these very important issues. At least for the church, I think they should be important, such as traditional family values and things like that. Regardless of whether you agree or disagree with them, I think in the past, I haven't seen any evidence of this from the Armenian church, other than simply, you know, making a statement in one of their newspapers or one of their media.
I would like to make just one statement. Very, how can you measure the strength of church? Just, I always bring one example. It destroys all other arguments. So, you know, there's a youth movement in Georgia for democracy, for the West, and there is a very prominent formula that was preached for years in Georgia by Ilya Chavchavadze. Ena mamuli sartsumunoeba. Ena is a language, mamul is homeland, and sartsumunoeba is belief. So Orthodox Christianity. This youth movement came out and said that Ena mamuli ertoba, language, homeland, unity. They took off religion. And I'm sure that they were also under the influence of the Western practice. As soon as they did this, the backlash was so immense that they next day changed it and did the following: language, homeland, unity, and the belief. By the end of the day, because, and this is something that people don't talk about. That's why I say that you need to know the cuisine. So even those youngsters, they've been told that this was the most naive and stupid thing to do. Now in Georgia, that's why I always say that when we speak about the religion, it doesn't mean the Georgians run every day with the, you know, how people perceive religious person, like fanatics running with the, like, you know, crosses, beating people. No, the influence of Georgian church is immense in telling people that live your life. It's not necessary to attend church, not necessary to kill yourself, but once we need you, once you need us, we are here. And we've been here for thousands of years. And once we call you saying that we need you, you need to come out. And 17th of May, this was a time when there are no protests, opposition, Western embassy, they all were absolutely silent, because thousands of people came out, and the church once again showed that if something happens, Georgian people, the deep state, will rely not on the US embassy, not on you and me, on GD, but on the church and its historic background. And this is the truth, not ideologically motivated narrative.
Yeah. Okay, as we near the end, I wanted to also cover one quick topic, which is, you know, we followed recently your announcement, or actually your presentation, with great interest about a new book that you said is a collaboration between Georgian and Russian scholars on the history of mutual relations between Georgia and Russia. Obviously, at various points in time, there was not a state of Georgia, or not even Russia, the same state of Russia. So I think it can also be said Georgian states and Russian states, or Georgian people and Russian people. What caught our eye about this presentation was that you mentioned that this book is the first byproduct of true Russian-Georgian dialogue without a Western grant. So can you tell us more about this statement and this aspect of how it came to life?
Of course, I can. Also, my colleague, Georgian, commented on this, saying that he asked whether all the Western participation means negative stuff. Well, this is what I love in my Western-oriented colleagues. They also they do not engage to the debate. What I said, they bring debate to another narrative. So, what is the problem here? And my response, I'm going to bring here my response. When we speak about Russia, all academic standards are over. No more standards. So people do not write what is objective. They construct history in the narrative they would like to hear. This is the same in Russia, USA, in Georgia, in Armenia. They all have their own histories, and I met so many people with their own history perceptions and narratives. So every time when you see the book financed by the Western colleagues, and they are mainly doing this one. I mean, Georgian is a country. Georgia does not finance its own research in history. This is all given to outsourcing to the Western colleagues, and they bring agenda, they bring narratives, they bring people, they bring organizations. So it's fully based on their platform, absolutely. And this book that I was honored to co-author, to be a co-author of the introduction. This book is an attempt to not impose anything on anyone, to let Georgians and Russians, without a Western platform, to write what they think, simply. And we agree on this agreement, and we agree on some agreements. And that is what I said, that for the first time, it's not Russians coming saying, we are going to pick A, B, C, D, and you will write what we would like to, or we will take A, B, C, D. We know what they're going to write. Or Western colleagues, it's like situation where I was said that Archil would like to collaborate. We know that you have your standpoint. Let's mix this up. This hasn't been happened for at least 5-6 years. And the books that you see, these books are written usually under the scholarship, where it's very precisely written that the goal is to say that Soviet Union was a dictatorship, was nothing good in the Soviet Union, that we should follow the pattern of analyzing Soviet Union as a part of memory politics. This memory politics falls in the pit of the Western perception. The Soviet Union was equal to Hitler's fascist movement, and so on and so forth. This is all. Yeah. This was not there. That was my point, and not that we wrote the best ever possible book, and there are no controversies.
By the way, so you wrote the introduction in the book, or the foreword, and the book, if I can say in my butchered Russian, История взаимоотношений России и Грузии в 10-х до первой половины 19 век. Is that correct? So from the 10th century to the 19th century.
The first half of 19th century.
Yeah, first half of 19th century. Thankfully, you don't cover the 2008 war in that book,
no.
but there must be other controversial episodes during the history. I'm just wondering how you approach that, because no matter whether it's Western funding or not, the identity of the peoples has developed on its own since 1990s, and there is some divergence. The reason I say this is because in Armenia, and this is not independent, this is actually the government's favorite academic wrote a book on a recent history, and they actually used the term when they covered Russian Empire activities, and they said Russia annexed Eastern Armenia. This drew the ire of the Russian embassy, and the next day the Armenian education ministry had to backtrack. But if there are certain things that don't fit the Russian narrative, for instance, have you seen that kind of a complaint from Russian academics or authors? What has been this experience like on thorny issues? And what were some of those thorny issues, if you can say that?
I mean, of course, the thorn issues come with Georgievsky Tractate. We on like 1783. I
Yes.
mean, well, let's be clear. I'm not a historian of the 10th century or 11th century. It was divided among those who know the history much better. There were some chapters that were written only by Russians, by mixed groups, and only by Georgians. So you see, you can feel the breadth of difference.
Conflict. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, there. And of course, I mean, this is a standard approach. So you take off these radical statements like annexation, and you like replace with like how to joined, like integration of territory to Russian Empire. Or you frequently can write the same as I do. I usually make that I say that Russian Empire, according to some Georgian scholars, occupied Georgian territories, violated the Georgiev Treaty, while Russian scholars do assume that there are no violations, that they bring A, B, C, D, G. This is how it usually done. For example, I wrote the last paper for the Russian, as a Russian studies scholar. I wrote a small paper on the member posts in Georgia with regard to Soviet Union, and I used the term annexation of Georgia in 1921, and they asked me whether I can change the word, and I forgot that, and I said that the Soviet Union, I mean, grabbed the Georgian land, or they joined the Georgia to avoid this pitfall, because we all understand that unfortunately in every country there are the term that we can use or we cannot. If we cannot use, we try to use neutral, or I usually bring all positions, because this is the best way to avoid misunderstanding. And even in presentation of this book, I said that our goal was not to find the truth. Our goal was to bring the debates again and again, and finally break this circle of thought that we must preach one way. The Western way, the European way, the American way is multi-approach. We must have a right to criticize everyone, to question everyone, and to raise as many questions as we can. No one can prohibit this one, and this is the most Western approach that can be used.
I don't want to minimize Georgia's differences with Russia, but I think you just covered bilateral relations between Georgia and Russia. Do you think it's possible to have a single book that covers not just Georgia and Russia, but also Georgia, Azerbaijan, Iran, Turkey, Russia, so all of the countries in the region?
You mean the 3+3?
Yes.
I mean, it depends. What is your goal? I mean, if your goal is to give a brief overview, there's like Oxford Handbook, Cambridge Handbook. If your goal is to bring a brief explanation, why not? I mean, 500 pages, 600 pages, some books have 1,000 pages. But and this book also includes his archive information from archives. So this book is not just chapters, but also this book contains archives from Russian libraries. And this is very important. I forgot to say this one, that on the one hand, we have a chapter written by scholars and they will all have some, tendencies, but archives are archives. And this book contains these archives. And I am fully in this call by my Russian colleagues to bring as many archive documents as possible to finally break at least this sinful narrative that some facts are not facts. No, there is archive documents. Let's bring them, and then let's debate. That is the point. But when we are told that we cannot, and I've been told by some of my colleagues, serious colleagues, that we cannot speak with Russian scholars now. We cannot attend conferences. I mean, Georgians cannot. Germans obviously can. Americans can, and they do, but we cannot do. Armenians cannot do, because we should keep solidarity with the West. And I've been taught.
When you have countries that are fully dictatorial, I think that's where we draw the line. Whether it's possible for an Azerbaijani academic to truly talk objectively about, for instance, the Arvans of Caucasus, or even Turkey about Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. So that's what I'm talking about.
You can. My last comment will be, there is a really nice concept in international relations called agreement on disagreement. They are topics that we do not discuss with Russians because there is no sense. We know that it's very painful. Like, for example, every time we try to debate the war in Ukraine, and we know there will be no objective response from Russian scholars because they are under pressure, and we put them under the risk. The same with Ukrainians. So we do not write the topics that are relevant nowadays. We write the topics that were relevant 20 years ago, so we can continue. So in one last statement, the science and history books do not analyze what happened yesterday. They analyze what happened at least the day before yesterday, because there is no sense of writing books about what happened with you yesterday, because you did not go through this emotional part to be at least ready to discuss the topic. That's all. I mean, this all stuff is there applied. So you are right in this sense, but I think that there are topics that you can speak with everyone. We just need to find the common ground.
All right. Well, good luck on the book. We wish you a lot of luck, and it'll be very interesting to hear what kind of reception and feedback you get on this.
Yes, hope feedback will be nice, and I hope that this is the first step on it, because I do think that we need to move on, not only with the Russia. I mean, why not with Armenia? Write a really nice book based on our archives in Armenia. I don't know any Georgian scholar that knows Armenian and who is Georgian, not Armenian, Georgian, who traveled to Armenia to work in archives, and this is unfortunate. And all my initiatives that I wrote for the last 2 years were unfortunately not supported by by my Armenian colleagues and by my Georgians too. Their narrative is very simple. We are friendly nations. Why do we need this? I hope we will break this ice too.
We do too. Okay, let's leave it there for today. Thank you so much for joining us, Archil. We hope to talk to you again.
Thank you, Archil.
See you soon too.
That's our show today. This episode was recorded on August 21, 2024. We've been talking with Dr. Archil Sikharulidze, who is a founder of the Tbilisi-based research institute Sikha Foundation in the Republic of Georgia. He holds degrees in international relations and focuses on Russian and Islamic studies, as well as political processes and international relations in Ukraine, the South Caucasus, and Kazakhstan. He writes extensively for various local and international platforms. Don't forget to find us everywhere on social media and follow us. We would really appreciate your comments and thoughts on our YouTube videos. And if you're up for it, go to podcasts.groong.org/donate and become a sustaining member to help us expand our reach. Thanks in advance. We'll talk to you soon.